today's goal is to really introduce a terrific option for you guys in our insurance and estates community. As an estate planning attorney, one of my passions and original goals in founding Insurance and Estates, I guess we're at about 7, 8 years ago now. And it was to have a multi-jurisdictional platform where people could get trust and estate support, along with the support for permanent life insurance strategies. And it took a long time. We just couldn't find an option that we're comfortable with. As many of you in our community may know, this is a long time coming. We couldn't find something that checked the boxes. And the goal was to have an ability to have supported process that was superior to your online services like LegalZoom, and a lot of people jumping on. Good to see you guys. We wanted to have supported process, but that offered things in addition to what you would get typically online, but something that also wasn't as cumbersome and intimidating as your typical law firm type environment, which is where I came from. And my business partner, Jason Kenyon, who co-founded with me, also came from that environment. So we know a few things about trust, and this has been an important part of our education on the site, as many of you that are jumping on are probably aware of. And so with that, I want to introduce the guys. I'm going to introduce Jason. And Jason has been with us since the inception of the company. Jason's the guy that actually introduced me to family estate docs, which we're going to get into shortly here with Jason and Eddie. So glad to have you guys. These guys are helping a lot of people set up trust planning programs. And so I want them to introduce this process. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat throughout. If we can't get to them during the presentation, we'll try to have a roundup at the end where we can answer some questions. If anything is too cumbersome from a legal standpoint, maybe it's a situation that you're in, we'll try to offer feedback. If we can't offer the feedback to you because of time or possibly a legal requirement, because it's too specific to a state situation, you can always email later to info@InsuranceandEstates.com, and I'll put that in the chat as well. Even though most of you have that information, but you can email to, and we'll try to offer some next steps there. So guys, let's kick it off. Jason, take it away. What's your experience so far in this program and helping people?
No, thanks, Steve. And Steve, it has been since 2017, when you and Jason started this company, and been here since day one, and we've helped.
Time flies.
I know it has. We've helped hundreds and hundreds of clients with really, we focused a lot on advanced life insurance concepts, helping people really with a lot of estate planning, wealth transfer, legacy planning, and just all these advanced concepts to really help people with their life. And the one piece we've been missing all these years really is just helping on the estate side and with the planning and the wills and the trust. And we're really excited that we have this. The public is responding to this, I think in a phenomenal way, and judging just by what we see today, this is a hot topic that everybody wants to talk about. So I really think you're going to like this information today. Been doing this for almost 15 years now, have a lot of experience in this arena. And I was really excited a couple of years ago to bring on Eddie. Eddie and I have been together. Eddie, you got the slides for us?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you advance them?
You ready to roll?
Yep, we're ready.
You're seeing my slides, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, my name's Eddie Schott. Sorry.
There we go. That's what I was trying to get you to. No big deal. No big deal.
It wouldn't move.
So, no, we've got a couple of slides just to kind of introduce us. So this is my family. Eddie and I are both instructors with the adult financial education system. We're both licensed life and health agents. I've got close to 15 years now of wealth transfer experience. Eddie and I go to church together, and that's really where we met about 10 years ago and got into this industry. Eddie, kind of move on to your slide. And I'll let Eddie kind of introduce himself. Eddie and I are going to kind of tag team this presentation today, so you don't get tired of just listening to one of us. So I think you'll really enjoy the information that we have. And Eddie will kick it off, and then I'll be back in here a little bit to pick up where he leaves off. So take it away, Eddie.
All right, great. My name is Eddie Schott. I've been a licensed health insurance agent for about 4 years now, and I had a real passion to get into just being able to serve my clients with whatever they could, come across that they needed that was within our realm. So a few years ago, we started checking out this company. The company's name that we work with is Family Tree Asset Positioning. And Jason and I spent probably a year and a half basically interviewing this company, trying to see if we felt comfortable with the platform. And then I know Jason brought it to Steve, and Steve looked at it for quite some time before, we all jumped on board that this is exactly the platform we want to be using. But there are approximately 180 trained estate planners across the United States using this platform. We use attorney-written software called Family Estate Docs. And a little bit about Family Estate Docs. This is a really simple interview process. Asking you questions in plain language allows our system to tailor your plan to your needs. It is a very versatile system. There is no generic, one-size-fits-all documents anywhere in here. They are very specifically generated for your needs. All the documents are prepared by estate planning attorneys with decades of experience. And I'm going to skip that unlimited access for a second because we need to talk about that a little bit deeper. But these estate plans, we've had thousands and 10,000s of these estate plans be time and attorney tested. When I say time and attorney tested, the plans have been through people's life cycle. So people have put a trust into place, passed away, their families have used the documents, and we've never had any issues with any of the documents being complete and accurate. We've also had people say, hey, we want to really double check you guys. They have done an estate plan or a trust through us, and then they've turned around and taken that plan to their personal attorneys and had them check it. And we have yet to ever have an attorney raise any questions about any of the documents that were prepared. We are licensed in all 50 states, so we can do this anywhere in the United States. And something that is very unique to our platform is that you have unlimited access to make changes and restatements for life. Okay. And all of us that are, not on our deathbeds are going to have changes in our lives. We're going to have relationship changes or some type of change that we've got to update our documents. So that is a great,
Eddie, let me speak to one thing. When we talk about license, a lot of the platforms offer state-specific documents that are vetted by attorneys to be compliant in every state. So when Eddie says that, it means that as guides, we can go in there and prepare documents that have been vetted for your specific state, which I think is a great thing that's happened with technology. And even when I was doing trust and estate planning as in my own law office, our software had the ability, we didn't do it a lot because we were very state specific, but we did have the ability to do a trust in another state. So I think that's a powerful thing. Go ahead, Eddie. Sorry to interrupt you, but.
Right. Oh, no problem. Yeah. No, that's great information. So today we hope that you benefit from conversation about your current estate plan. Okay. We hope that you learned something today that you were not aware of. You will notice there are a few of these little QR codes scattered throughout the presentation today. If at any time you'd like to book an appointment to talk to Jason or I, just click on that link and that'll take you directly to an appointment calendar that you can schedule with us. Okay. So we like to start out by doing a little bit of, definitions here. A will is thought of as just this universal document that takes care of everything, is what we get a lot in our office. And the unfortunate truth is it doesn't. Okay, it leaves some things pretty wide open. So a will is simply a legal document that describes how you would like your property or your other assets to be distributed after your death. Okay. A revocable trust, which is what we're going to concentrate on here today, allows asset management during your life, and it transfers assets after death. avoiding probate. And that avoiding probate needs to be bold typed, underlined, starred, because that is our whole purpose here. Okay. Probate is simply a legal process that you must follow to transfer or inherit property after the person who owned the property has passed away if there is no trust in place. Okay, so this is a universal law. It goes across all states. If you do not have things properly documented in a will, a trust, some other form, it's going to go through probate. In the state where we live, a will is a very simple document, but it does not help you avoid probate at all. The only way to avoid probate is, that we deal with on a daily basis is a revocable trust. Okay, so today's presentation, we're going to help you identify what you currently have. Some people, might think they have all their documents and everything in order and figure out by the end of the presentation here that you don't. We do this first, and this is a little bit different approach than a lot of people would take, but we like to understand the dynamics in your family tree, because your family tree and the people in your family is who is involved mostly in the trust. Every now and then we'll get somebody that is not in that family tree involved in the trust, but 99% of the time it's people out of the family tree. So we'd like to do a little exercise with you and have you go through and kind of draw out your family tree. So, if you have a piece of paper handy, you're welcome to do this. Or after the webinar, you're welcome to sit down and kind of do this, because you talk with us, we're going to ask you about your family tree, and we're going to sit here and draw out a family tree with you. So everybody's got a distinct family tree. The first purpose of the diagram we're about to do is to show you the structure and the people or in your family or your world that you would want to represent you if you were unable to speak for yourself. Okay. So we've got that nice orderly, graphic up there on the left-hand side of the screen. We'd all love this, family tree to look like this. Unfortunately, a lot of us have something that resembles more like this, illustration on the right-hand side. I always comment that my family is a bush. There's no tree. There's no direct branches. It goes all over the place. So in starting to draw out your family tree, let's draw, a circle kind of in the center of your page there. Put your name in the circle. If you're married, draw a line across to put your spouse's name in another circle. And if you're divorced, you put an X through that line. Okay. And believe me, just follow through with this. We'll show you the usefulness of this here in a few minutes. Okay, if you are a widow or widower, you can put a circle over there with a W in it, however you'd like to illustrate that. If you're remarried, please put a big vertical line in between the two of you going up and down there. So
for you guys just jumping on, sorry to interrupt you, Eddie.
Yeah.
This is our family tree process, and this is a great part of the process that that I wasn't aware of when I was practicing this full time. So if you're just jumping on now, that's what Eddie's doing. He's just helping with this idea of drawing your family tree, which is a great first step in estate planning.
Great. Thanks, Steve. All right. So if your parents are still alive, you could put them up above you, kind of at the 10 and 2 o'clock position, something like that. If you have children that are to your marriage, that have been, born into the marriage, you would draw a line off of that center line that connects you and your spouse down to each child. Leave some space in between the children if they're married so that we can continue this on down, later on. Okay, if you brought a child into the relationship, that child is actually tied to your circle instead of the line. And there's some reasoning to that later on. So a lot of people might have a family tree that looks something like this. Okay. Obviously, we could go on forever on the family tree, but we're going to kind of stop here. You guys are starting to get the idea of where we're headed with it. We want to put names in all of these circles because later on, we're going to need to know information about all of these people. So I'm going to kick this over to Jason and let him talk to you for a few minutes here, and then I'll be back with you in a few.
So thanks, Eddie. So we kind of like to pause in the presentation and just kind of give you some real stories. And, we have probably a couple hundred stories we could choose from, but what's really unique about this software that we have access to is that no matter what your life situation is, we can take care of it. And we have an example not too recently, somebody or recently somebody came in the office. She was divorced. She owned a house, had a couple of investment accounts, and she just wanted to make sure that her daughter did not have to go through the probate court system that she had to with her parents. Like I said, she just had one daughter, so it was a very, very simple interview with her to figure out exactly what she needed. We did need to find some backups and a couple of other people for some of the power of attorneys. But for the most part, very, very simple process. And she was able to leave with a lot of peace of mind of knowing that she had her paperwork in order and had everything ready to help make her daughter's life much easier once she passes away one day. And then we have, others that come into the office that we've had a lady recently who's unfortunately her husband just recently had a stroke. And on top of that, was no longer able to work. Um, they also have a daughter who is special needs, and they also have another daughter who was bedridden and was on needing to be on SSI and governmental benefits. So Eddie and I were just we were just amazed at how this woman was able to keep it together with all that she had going on in her life. But she had some serious planning that needed to be done. There were some special needs provisions that needed to be done. And that's another great thing about this software is that, for my entire career, we've always helped people on the backside of special needs planning with using life insurance to make sure that a special needs trust was funded. But now, we have the ability across all 50 states now to even help you, design that special needs trust to provide and make sure that your children are protected and they're able to still receive their government benefits. So that was a real special case that we were able to work on. And then we also have a lady right now who is 81 years old, I believe. She has 18 beneficiaries, and all 18 beneficiaries are receiving different shares or different percentages of her estate. And on top of that, she also has 22 rental properties that will need to be funded into the trust. So these are just some really examples of how it doesn't matter if your estate is something that is extremely small, maybe you just have a home that needs to be protected, or if you have a very, very detailed and involved estate and family tree, this software can provide the details and can help pretty much deal with any situation. I mean, Eddie, I don't think we've run across really truly any situation that we can't deal with right now.
Yeah, great point about special needs. 1 in 30, I think the statistic is of kids that have autism. We have a daughter that has some special needs, and I've dealt with so many clients. So it's really great. And we have had that ability, in the past, in my experience as an attorney, had the ability to add provisions into a trust that accommodates special needs. People think, oh, I have to spend thousands of dollars and it's really, I have to go and do some kind of complicated plan for special needs. And that's not the case. You just need the right language in the trust. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Jace.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's dive a little bit more into this presentation. And Eddie, if you can, you're going to have to drive the boat here a little bit. Advance the slides.
So Jason, before we move on, let's talk just one more little story about special needs.
Okay.
So Jason likes to use this story a lot, and I'll tell it since I brought it up today. A lot of people think that, well, I can just transfer all my funds to the oldest child because they've already agreed to be the guardian for the special needs child. Okay. And that takes care of it. We're done and over with. Well, what happens if that oldest child goes out here, is driving down the road, is texting, and runs into a school bus and causes an accident? Okay. Now everybody on that school bus is going to go looking for money and, off of the guy that caused the accident. So he's going to get sued and he's going to lose everything that he has, including that inherited money that was meant for that special needs child. or person. Okay. So by putting it in a trust, what that does is it sets it up for its proper use without giving him, that same person would still have access as the trustee to make disbursements to that special needs child, but it doesn't leave them open to lose everything because that money's not his to lose. Okay, so there's some very special training that, or planning that needs to be done there.
Right. I'll just add to that, Eddie. So when somebody passes and they have a trust and that trust becomes irrevocable, there's a lot of communication around and confusion around what is an irrevocable versus a revocable. So what you set up during your lifetime is completely changeable, flexible. But if something were to happen to you, then you got this irrevocable trust that's there for your special need kids or other beneficiaries, which is a really incredible tool in that kind of circumstance that you mentioned.
Great. So we've drawn out our family tree up here above, and now we're going to kind of go on to setting the stage for the proper distribution when that time comes. Okay, and then after that, we're going to talk some more about properly funding your trust, both while you are alive and when your life ends. Okay. It's very important that you identify everybody in your family tree. We'll sit here and talk with a client a lot of times, and we get half of the family, and then the trust gets about done, and they're like, "Well, we forgot about Sally or our brother Joe over here. We really want to include them in something." So it's important that that family tree is complete. And the information you're going to need to have when you talk, when you talk to us, is you're going to need their ages, their addresses, and how they're related to you. Okay, we're not going to need social security numbers and all that type of stuff, but we do need an identifying way of getting a hold of them when that time comes. So if you think about the current plan that you have in place, do you have a will currently, or do you have a current trust? And how long ago were these completed? If you're like me and a lot of the world, it could have been 20 years ago and you've never looked back at it. My wife and I did a will, 20 plus years ago when we first started doing mission work outside of the country. And it was, it still had documents in there to have our kids shipped to my in-laws for guardianship and all of that. And we had never updated it until, fairly recently, honestly. Relationship changes. There may have been divorces. There may have been, your kids may have been married, divorced. You may have grandchildren. All kinds of different relationship changes happen to us on a yearly basis. Okay. These are all things that are important to update within your trust and on your documents.
Yeah.
Okay. Have there been any major asset changes? Have you bought more property? Have you acquired, a nice coin collection, whatever, these assets may be? We all have asset changes on a daily basis. Maybe you've moved states, maybe, and different states have different rules. So it's good to keep these updated according to where you live at. And health changes. A lot of people don't consider health change or, health a big issue when you're trust planning, but it's an extremely big issue because it tells us what we need to help you cover so that your assets don't get eaten up in, ways that you don't want them to go out the door with. All right. So now that we've kind of clarified, where you're at, let's figure out what we can do about that. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey here. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of a dark journey, and it's something that Jason and I talk about daily. So by no means do we ever wish to offend anybody. But unfortunately, we've got two things in life that we always, that every one of us is facing, and that is death and taxes. So today, unfortunately, we talk about dying some. And like I said, it is not a lighthearted subject, but it is just something that needs discussed. So on this journey, let's talk about this. So it's 9 o'clock at night and you find yourself in the hospital on a table in a coma. And the doctor does not think that you're going to survive. Okay. The doctor is going to want to know if you've left any directions for them on how to continue treatment. They're also going to want to know who in your life you've appointed to make those final decisions. Okay. So this is a pretty bad situation. You're laying there, a doctor already looked at you and said, "We don't think you're going to make it." They typically have a second doctor opinion by the time that they go to the family and say, here's the situation. Okay. So looking back at that family tree that we drew out, who would that person be? Would that be your spouse? Would that be one of your children? Maybe a sibling? Maybe a real close friend that's a doctor or a nurse, something like that. We get a big variety there. Okay. So on your family tree, if you've drawn it out, go ahead and just, put a big circle around them and put on their, HPOA. Okay. That's a good way of marking that one. Okay. So what if your spouse was on the table next to you? So now in that last slide, you just told me that, well, this would be my spouse. Well, what if your spouse is with you and they're on the table beside you in the same situation? So we need to have a second choice, and we really like to have a third choice a lot of times. So everything that we do, we want to plan 2 and 3 people deep, because none of us ever know what tomorrow's bringing. Jason and I've had a big shock this week. We lost a friend here, and it was a total shocker to us. I mean, there was no rhyme or reason. She ran off the road and passed away. I mean, she got 4 kids. It's just a terrible situation, and none of us ever know when that day's coming. None of us have any clue. So while you're going through that, what we've actually done here is we've actually identified who your power of attorney for your healthcare would be. Okay. And as you can see, that was a really easy exercise. Walked you through it. That's pretty much how we do the whole process. We walk you through one topic at a time. We figure out who fits the scenario the best that can help you out, and be your voice for you. So in that same scenario, how you guys did survive, but you were disabled for 6 months or maybe a year. Maybe you've had some brain injury. Maybe you were just physically injured to where you couldn't, get out and about, right? Whatever, that scenario might be. Who would you want to take on the role of making sure that your finances were taken care of? Sign checks for you, pay utilities, pay the mortgage, go get your license plates for your vehicle, whatever that may be. Okay. So there
Yeah,
again,
they
we
can
walk.
just interrupt Eddie, because a lot of people maybe have someone that's really good with healthcare decisions. They might have someone else that's really good with finance. I've seen that a lot. A lot of times,
Correct.
maybe an adult child can be a healthcare person, and they might be ideal for that. Maybe not so much for the finance. Good point.
Absolutely, we get that all the time, and so we're talking a little bit here about your finances now. So this person, like Steve just said, does not have to be the same person. It can be a big mix and match. Maybe you've got 2 sons and one of them is great healthcare wise, or you think that they could make a decision if need be, and the other one is great with finances. Maybe you would alternate them and put one in front of the other for your financial power of attorney, the other one for your healthcare. However we would like to set that up, we can do that for you. So here we're identifying who's going to be the power of attorney for your finances. Okay. So here, in just a couple minutes, we went through and identified key figures in your trust planning. Okay. Very simple, no legal jargon involved, nice, simple answers, and it takes care of all the documents that we need. So now, would that same person be your choice for the executor of your will, or would that be somebody else in the family tree? There again, this might be a third person altogether. Maybe you don't want the kids burdened with being the executor, or as we'll call them in the trust here in just a couple of minutes, the trustee. Maybe you want a sibling or some outside, friend that is really, that you feel is very stable minded and would make sure to follow your directions to a T. Okay. So why are we talking about all this? What is the big deal here? So probate court is the big deal here. Okay. If you have a will or if you don't have a will, in most cases, both of them guarantee that you're going to have to go to probate court. This does not matter what state you live in. Okay. If your estate is not properly funded, or if it has the minimum amount of assets required by probate law, it will go to probate court. Okay, so you could have a trust in place that was not funded, and it's still going to end up in probate because you have not properly got your ducks in a row and your paperwork in order. Okay. Um, Minimum amount of assets. Every state has a requirement on the books that says if your estate is worth X number of dollars, you are required to present it to the county and go through probate court. Okay. We've heard states clear down to $50,000 of assets. And I know there's states out there that are, $250,000 plus before it goes through probate. Excuse me. That all depends on where you live at as far as where that cutoff line is. Okay. So why do we want to avoid probate? What's the big deal? If any of you have ever had to go through probate, you could probably jump on here and answer that question for us. Very rarely do we get people that say, hey, probate court was a breeze. It was no big deal. Why do people worry about it? Okay.
If anybody on, has had an experience, feel free to give us a thumbs up in the chat. And we know that you've had a tough probate experience. That means you're a little maybe wiser than the average.
So we had a gentleman in here the other day that says there is no way I'd want my family to have to go through probate. He says I got thrown into probate in a relative's estate that I shouldn't have even been involved in. And he had an aunt, I believe it was, and she had left everything in a will to some of the nieces and nephews and some friends. Well, it went to when they took the death certificate and the will to the court said, well, who is representing this? Who is the executor of the will? Well, the person that was the executor of the will had passed away already. Okay. So the court's like, well, we've got to find a new executor. So typically what they'll do on that is they can take the beneficiaries and ask them, who would you like to be the executor? Or that's what they did in this case. Okay. Well, they nominated two other people and the judge wasn't happy with their relationship to this lady because they were friends. They weren't direct family or something. So the judge finally went back and they asked this client of ours to be the executor because he was the only blood related person or closest blood related person to this lady. Well, anyway, he spent 3 years going through probate and doing inventories of her house, doing inventories of her storage units, and collecting certified signatures from everybody.
Yeah, 3 years. That 3 years of court maneuvering just to get through the estate. That's a huge thing that I want people to understand, that kind of a problem.
And then we're going to see down here at the bottom, you see some costs brought up about probate. Well, some of the people that were involved as beneficiaries and stuff started contacting the attorney that was helping him probate this. The attorney started charging $75 per phone call to the estate. So there's all kinds of costs that can be racked up in this. And it was a horror story to say the least. Okay. So 3 years later, he finally gets established through probate. And now he's in our office setting up a trust for himself because he doesn't want this to happen to his family. Okay. So why do you want to avoid probate? Privacy is a big issue.
We just had a comment come through where one of our people watching said they're into 21 years. That might be a record. I'm not sure if I've heard one.
Holy moly. Yeah.
That means that we have a major breakdown somewhere in the assets, in the estate, a conflict, whatever, but that's incredible to hear. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. That's sad. Whoever that is, I feel for you greatly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why do we want to avoid probate? Privacy is a big issue to people. As soon as your estate enters probate, it becomes public record. So unfortunately, we have those vultures out there in the world that sit there and go through public record all the time. And all of a sudden they become related to you. You owe them money, any number of scenarios could pop up. Okay. So avoiding probate avoids a public record. The inconvenience, the trustee may have to appear in court multiple times. chances are they're going to have to appear in a court a minimum of 2 times. So if they live across the country, that means they're going to have to possibly fly to wherever and show up in court to represent the estate.
Yeah.
Okay, time. You know, our client, our local, our client here recently, 3 years of his time back and forth between the court, getting signatures, getting this and that done. 3 years is a long time. In our chat over here, 21 years. I just couldn't imagine dealing with that. That's crazy.
That's a full breakdown. And
Yeah.
there are very large estates where people have been tied up. The Prince Estate, we've used that as an example. That's my home state, Minnesota. And but if you have small estates, it can be even worse in some ways because the assets just get eaten up from that.
Correct. By time the court's done with them, there's nothing to hand on to the next generation.
Yeah.
Okay. So cost, statistically, if you Google this is what you're going to find. How much does it cost to go through probate? They say 3 to 10% the value of the estate is a very probable cost. And depending on your state, I've heard that this is actually very low. So, where we're from, a $300,000 little starter house, if that's your only asset, you're going to spend $9,000 as a minimum going through probate. Okay. Now, we will have people pop up every now and then and say, hey, it didn't cost us quite that much. Well, you got off easy if it didn't, because the statistics don't lie, unfortunately, that they found the number somewhere. So, statistically, this is what you need to expect for going through probate. So that $9,000 on a $300 estate, that's pretty costly if you stop and think about that. And that's going to come right off the top of the estate before anybody else gets anything.
Yeah. Some states are better than others, but there's no probate that's fun, because if you think about it, I mean, court procedures are complicated for most everybody. It's just a hassle for people.
Yep.
So.
Well, most people have never been to court. The vast majority of people have never been to court and had to deal with that situation. And it puts you on edge. It makes you nervous. It makes you feel like a criminal, whether you are or not.
Right.
So
this is a key part, right? So when people put together a trust, what does it do for them?
So by properly designing and properly funding the revocable trust, you can prevent probate from needing to occur. Okay, so we'll kind of walk through this a little bit more as we go through the rest of this slideshow. And if you have questions about, what we're talking about funding or how it's properly put together, we'll hopefully answer those as we finish out here. So it's important that you understand the roles of the people that you have in your revocable trust. Remember earlier on that family tree, we started talking about power of attorneys. And now we need to come up with some people to help manage our trust for us if we're not around to do it ourselves. So we're going to build a team of people here to take care of that. Okay, you and your spouse, if you're married, will always be the trustors. Now, this is kind of every state uses different terminology. So trustor, grantor, or settler all mean the same thing. It just depends on what state you're in as to what they're going to call that position. And a lot of you would be familiar with the executor of a will. This would be the same basic position, if it was a will versus a trust. Okay, so they all mean the same thing. And only the trustors can set and change the rules in the trust document. Now, the trustor is you're the owner of the trust. Okay, so we're going to use the word trustor so that we don't, are kind of universal going through here.
And Eddie, there's one more, personal representative is another one for a will that people might have come across depending on their home state. So is strictly for a will as well.
Okay. So regardless of your health, you will always be the trustor, and that's whether you are alive or have passed away. You are always the trustors of your trust. When you or your spouse's life ends, the wishes you've established in your trust may become irrevocable. Now, we have a couple different choices of when that irrevocable part kicks in, because that's a new word. We've been talking about a revocable trust. Revocable means that you can change it at any point in time. At some point, we want this trust to become irrevocable so that there are no more changes allowed in it. Okay. Excuse me. So typically that is at one of two places: upon the death of the first spouse or upon the death of both spouses. And depending on the family dynamics and the situation would depend on how, when you would choose that to happen. And that's just something we need to have as a conversation and figure out when that best works for you. So that is who the trustors are. So now we're going to talk about the trustee. Okay. The trustee is the manager of your trust. Okay. Is the best way of looking at them. They manage your trust. They carry out your wishes. They cannot change your wishes. They cannot change the rules that you have laid out in your trust. Their job is simply to follow the rules. Okay. No different than a manager at a business. Their job is to follow the rules that the owner of that business has set out to follow. Okay. Now, you will always be the trustor. You're always going to own your trust, but you will not always be the trustee, because someday you're going to pass away. So you obviously can't be the trustee at that stage. Okay. You can't make any further decisions. Your doctor or you, two doctors together may agree that you no longer are able to make decisions. Okay. So this would be something that your family and you and the doctors would have a conversation, say, hey, mom or dad's maybe not capable of making these decisions anymore. It's probably time that they step away from, signing legal documents and stuff like that. Or there could be a situation where a judge could rule that you may no longer be the trustee. Maybe they determine that you're not mentally competent enough to do that anymore. Another scenario is that you can just simply resign as being the trustee and let somebody else deal with it. So, if you've assigned your oldest child to be the trustee after you, the successor trustee, then you could step down as the trustee and let the oldest child, take care of the trust from there on out.
Yeah, that's an easier process for anyone that's maybe a little bit older. It's much easier to have an adult child step in as your trustee versus trying to get them all figured out with power of attorney.
Right.
That can be very complicated and uncertain when you try to do it that way. So you have both. You have both of those in this plan, but the trustee role is very effective.
Correct. So that trustee will be able to ultimately make a lot of decisions for you and be able to speak for you of what you've laid out in your trust. Okay. There are things within your trust that might be, I want to say, a little bit vague as to, how all of your assets are distributed. For instance, you might not spell out that I want, my house sold by this realtor at this date and time, all these specifics that you don't know. So that's going to leave that trustee to go find a realtor and take care of that sale. So this is somebody that you need to really be able to follow, or, the trust that they're going to follow your wishes, as you've got them expressed in your trust. Okay. Most cases, these people are going to come out of your family tree. Okay. There are exceptions to that. I've got, I'm very familiar with the situation to where, person passed away and their oldest son was in charge of making the decision to unplug them from life support. Okay. Because of the anguish that caused him, he immediately went back, changed his trust, and took all of his family out of those roles. And he hired a lawyer or law firm to be his trustee from here on out. And the whole point of that, and the healthcare power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, they also have control over. Okay. Everybody's got their own personal feelings on that. That is an option out there. If there's people that just don't trust the family or that want to take that burden off of the family. I don't know what your experience with that's been, Steve, but I'm sure that you've seen that.
Well, it's not the typical. The typical is to want probably your most trustworthy kid or number of kids thereof to be able to help with those decisions if you're confident. I know in my own family, I know the healthcare person would be my sister from my parents who are still here and they're into their 80s. And so the natural for healthcare would be my sister. They wouldn't even consider a third party, but I'm sure there are other people that third party is comforting to them because they feel they'll be objective and they won't be as impacted by that. So it definitely is case by case.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, what does it take to establish a revocable trust? What all are we going to be looking at and asking you questions about? Is sometimes what we look about. So if you choose to establish a trust, Jason and I are going to go through, one or the other of us will go through and talk to you, and we're going to review things like your real estate holdings, your long-term care plans, income plans for retirement, your health conditions, your assets, your current beneficiary arrangements. On the beneficiary side, a lot of times we will not put life insurance or, like an IRA account or something like that into a trust name. We may list the trust as a contingent beneficiary or something, depending on what you're needing to accomplish with it. But we will tell you that life insurance, as long as it has the proper beneficiaries listed on it, that's where you want to leave it. The beneficiaries, that legal process is very simple. The life insurance company is going to distribute out those checks, and that's something that you or the trustee wouldn't have to take care of in the future. Okay.
And
so
let me speak to that a little bit, Eddie. So even among law firms, a lot of times the part that gets ignored is some of this kind of stuff. So what we're really hoping to offer is just the ability for you to have both sides covered. You got your legal side covered. Yeah. I support the guys in that process. My business partner does, the platform does, which is incredible in and of itself with the way that software is designed. But then you also have this funding piece. And these guys are true experts on the funding side, which is a really terrific full service idea that we hope people will all be excited to take advantage of. It's pretty powerful.
Absolutely.
Correct. Yeah, that is definitely something that we feel that we are, even more qualified than an attorney in that aspect, because we can do both sides. We can help we can help walk you through the trust process. We can't provide you legal advice per se personally, but we can walk you through the process, and we can definitely help you on the funding side to make sure that what you've put in place is actually accomplishing what you want it to do. Okay. So one thing that we do with all of our clients by time that we're done with you is we want to make sure that your house is in order, that your documents are taken care of, or as Jason likes to say, that your ducks are in a row. Okay. Because it's really a bad day when your ducks get out of a row. It's hard to get them back in the right, path there.
Apparently it can be a bad couple of decades, according to some experience.
According to our chat. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And not making light of that in any way. That's the kind of thing to avoid, of course, at all costs.
Correct. So why do people not have appropriate estate plans or trusts in place? They think that they're going to cost too much. Keep thinking about that cost of probate back there that we showed you. Okay. They've just not taken the time to get it done. A lot of people think it's going to take a lot of time to get all this put together. It really doesn't. We have a 45-minute hour meeting with you. We might bounce a couple emails back and forth, and really within a couple hours total, you can have a trust put in place, as far as timing goes. So it's not that deep. You can get as deep as you want to, obviously, on it for specific requests and stuff like that, but we'll walk you through all of that. Okay. They don't know who to talk to about it. Well, we've solved that problem for you here today. You've got, a group of people here that you're more than welcome to talk to about it. And we're going to walk you through that process. Okay. But the number one reason is that they've just never gotten around to it. We all live busy lives. We think, hey, we're going to take this 45 minutes, an hour, go watch this webinar, get some good information, and we're going to get this checked off of our, honey-do list here. And then as soon as we get off the webinar, the dog gets sick, kids call, now it's 3 months later and we're thinking, wow, spent all that time and I didn't do anything with it. So we just want to, we all have a hard time getting around to it. Okay, so here's your chance to get this done, taken care of. We make a very simple process, and we're going to be very transparent with you up front, what it takes from you, what it takes from us to get this done. Okay. So we have a package deal that we use, and this is the only option that we offer. It is a complete package because we want to make sure that it all works properly together. So for $1,995, you receive a revocable living trust, certificate of trust, pour over will, which is simply a will that's designed to work within a trust. There's nothing special about it other than that. It's just designed to work within the trust. I'm sure that on the legal side, they could get very deep into what's different about it, but that's the simple version. You get healthcare power of attorneys for both you and your spouse if you're married, financial power of attorneys, living will and healthcare directives for everyone involved. And then this bottom one is the big kicker to it. You get lifetime access to update your information at no additional legal fees. Okay, so you're 3 years down the road, and now you've got 5 new grandkids. You've not added them onto any of your paperwork. You give us a call, we can get in, we can help you go on, we can add them as beneficiaries, take care of it, and there's not going to be a charge for that. Where you're going to have to reprint your documents and get them signed and notarized again, but we're not going to charge you for updating that document. You are not going to find an attorney anywhere in the U.S., as far as I'm concerned, that would do that for free. That's part of their, that's part of their business.
Right. If they do, they would be charging some kind of a subscription fee for that.
Okay.
Is going to cost money every year to keep that going. So, yeah, the lifetime updates is one of the things that I'm most excited about with this program for people, because I've just seen so many people that have changes and they want the ability to get to regularly make changes if something happens, or if they have a change of heart of some kind.
And we had somebody in our office recently who had a trust, revocable living trust done, what, Eddie, about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and they needed to make some changes. Well, they originally paid $3,200 for this trust, 8 years ago. And then they needed to make a restatement, and what it was going to cost them over $1,000 to make the changes. Plus, the attorney was charging a $150 yearly maintenance fee that they had not been paying. So they were going to have to back pay $150 times 7 before they could even pay the $1,000 to make the changes in the trust. So it is, we see this come to life pretty much every day in our practice. And if you're young, even if you're still not as young as you wish you were, you're still going to have those health changes, those asset changes, those relationship changes, and you need to have kind of a living document there that you can access and make changes to.
Right, access through a secure portal, which is a great thing also.
Correct. So there again, that brings up a great point. What if we all vanish off the face of the, Steve and Jason and I all vanish? You're still going to have access to that portal to update things. You'll have a hard copy of all of your trust. So even if we were not around, you've still got access to this, which is just a phenomenal feature of it as far as I'm concerned. Okay. We do have a yearly maintenance fee that we are supposed to tell everybody about. It's $29.95. The first year is included. And after that, they are supposed to bill you the $29.95 for maintenance fee. As of now, we've not had clients build that, but it is definitely there to be aware of. Okay. The other thing that you're going to mention is Steve mentioned earlier, there's an online funding kit. And this is a wealth of information. Even after your trust is established, you can get on here, log into your portal, go into the funding kit, and it will walk you through every different type of possession that you have, any assets that you have, as to what needs done with those. Do they just need listed out? On a notebook paper, do they need funded into the trust? Do you need to change deeds or titles over to the trust name? And it walks you through all of that. And we will actually, help walk you through a lot of that also. So, what happens if there's a house fire? All your documents get burned up. You can store all your documents online here, notarized copies of everything. Maybe you're on vacation, need a power of attorney. whatever that situation is. It just makes it very convenient. Okay.
Yep.
So
Just to add to that too, you're gonna get guidance on how to get them signed, because there's specifics around that, which is another piece of this, making sure it's all done right.
correct. Okay. Some people say, oh, okay, so that's a good starting point, but what are the other fees involved in this? Okay. So there are some other possible fees involved. To fund your real estate into the trust name, you're going to need to do a quitclaim deed on it. And you're going to quitclaim deed that property into the name of the trust of which you own. So it's not going anywhere. You still own the property, but the legal entity that now owns the property is the trust. Okay. And that is the whole purpose that we're here, is we're trying to protect that from going through probate. If you don't change that deed, that property now is going to end up pushing you back through probate, even though you have a trust. Okay. So wherever you're at, whatever the fee to get a quitclaim deed done, we can help you out with that. We've got some access to some different programs that we can do that through, but it just depends on the cost, depending on where you're located at. Okay. Every now and then we might have a need for an amendment because there's a special circumstance. Those are very rare, especially getting the trust initially established. That typically comes along down the road. And to be honest, we just don't see very many amendments being done. Okay. Life estates. This is something that we have ran into quite a bit because we have a lot of couples out there that are not legally married, but they co-own property together. Okay. And they want to make sure that their partner, significant other, is able to live in that house until they pass away before, the other partner's heirs come in and want that house from them. So there's some really nice stuff that can be done there. We have an attorney draft that up for you if that's a situation that comes up, but that is an additional possible fee. And then you're going to have to pay somebody to notarize all of this when we, get you all the documents sent to you. So that's really the fees that would be involved in it. Typically we find that, no more than a couple $100 more other than, what we're looking at. So
Pretty nominal stuff. And the goal is that this is going to be less expensive than what you guys would experience in a, definitely in a law firm environment. And you're getting a lot of guidance. So you're not having to go on somewhere, a page somewhere like LegalZoom and figure it out, from start to finish yourself, which can lead to a lot of issues and problems. So hopefully you get the benefit of both. I really appreciate you guys joining us. If there's no obligation, if you decide you want to do a one-to-one, you can click that link for Jason's calendar and you're going to get either Jason or Eddie to walk you through more details, help you with the family tree, help you with the ins and outs of this, just to help figure it out. You also have that QR code. If you're tech savvy, you can get the link that way. We'll have more of these webinars coming up. And we'll also have, if you haven't really subscribed to the channel, other than being on our mailing list, our email list, we've got a lot of content that we're putting together for Trust and Estates. We really want you to have this information. We want you to be able to take care of your loved ones. Looks like we have a question. And this is going to be from Peter. Do you want to put it in the chat, Peter, or do you... Notice you got your hand raised. You can talk or you can put it in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with. And maybe our tech is being tricky here. Hang on just a second.
So while Steve's taking care of that,
Yes.
we can get these plans ready in as little as a week, depending on the complexity of it. And if you respond to our emails back and forth. Anyway, we'll put up a QR code here at the end. We really do want you to know that we walk you through the process. We're not going to charge you anything to walk you through the process outside of the cost of the trust. Okay. If that means multiple phone calls, that means multiple phone calls. We want to make sure that things are taken care of properly. Okay. So here's a QR code for any of you that would like to schedule an appointment with us. We'll do those through Zoom, phone calls, whatever, we need to do for you.
And Peter, it looks like you're muted. If you want to text a question, you can. Maybe you didn't mean to raise your hand.
He put it in Steve, do you see it in the chat? That's a good
I
question
gotcha.
for you to handle.
I got you. So he's asking if Jason and Eddie are attorneys. No, they're not attorneys. So what they're doing is they're guiding you through the program. The platform is attorney vetted. So what that means is that the platform attorneys put together the software, and the platform is a decision tree that can walk you along a path to make sure the documents are right. But so they're not doing a legal review of the documents. The legal review is the documents are basically a self-help program, but the legal side of it is there. And I'm available also. We can't say that because of our state to state requirements, we can't say that we're offering attorney reviews for these documents. So I do want to be clear about that. But what you're getting is a state specific attorney vetted documents that has all the details that you want to put into it. And then the trust is generated based on those state parameters that are put in there. So the reason it took us so long to create a program like this is because we weren't happy with the self-help stuff that's on the web, which basically makes everyone do it themselves. Or and we didn't want to go the route of having an attorney because we can't do it in every state. We can't offer traditional legal services, but I can tell you if we did, it'd be a lot more expensive. That, at least from my standpoint, it would be a lot more expensive than the $1,900. So it's really, we're trying to hit a sweet spot for you guys where you're getting a very economical, guided, properly done trust that has lifetime changes and that flexibility with it. So I hope that answers your question, Peter. We're trying to find that sweet spot between the attorney prepared and the self-help. So we've got a hybrid program that we're promoting with this. So hope that answers your question. Yeah, go ahead.
So on that note, Steve, if we're going through this process and we get something that feels like a legal question, we are either going to tell you that we can't help you with it, or we're going to, we've got attorneys that we can, send those questions to, and they can reply to them. And they work with the documents service. So that's the only thing. And there again, state specific, we may have, we may not always be able to get exactly what you're looking for.
And believe me, guys, if you know the lay of the land, there's attorneys that are licensed in one state, and maybe it's Utah or somewhere like that, and they're still providing trust services, across the country. And I always wrestle with that. So I feel like if you're going to promote attorney services, if you really want an attorney, you need to get one that's in your area specifically. Don't go out of state and try to do that. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be valuable. So if you want an attorney who's in your area, that's great. That's an option for you. It's going to be more expensive, and maybe some people need that, but I don't think everyone does. So because if you have a very straightforward, where you have a few beneficiaries, even if you have a special needs child, the software will accommodate this stuff. So as an attorney with some knowledge about this, I'm comfortable with that. But it's case by case. If you're going to go online and try and do it, I can guarantee there's a much higher chance there could be issues with that. So we really are trying to find you the right guidance without having to jump through the steps of finding someone locally. And even that can be touch and go. You might find someone amazing. You might find someone that's just not very motivated to really get into the details with you.
Yeah.
So we want to try and find that sweet spot for you that you can get the quality and the attention that you deserve, of course, with these kinds of important decisions. Let's wrap it up. I appreciate all you guys from our community. It's great to see you guys participating and wanting to learn about this. It's fun to connect with you. Maybe you've been a part of our I&E movement for quite a while. So I really commend you. I appreciate connecting, and we'll be doing some more of this stuff. Again, take the opportunity. And with that, thanks so much for joining us all today. We appreciate it, and we will hopefully talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, guys.